Hi everybody, thanks for joining us today for our webinar, 3 Secrets to Getting Hired on LinkedIn. My name is Jeff Murphy. I'm an Associate Director in the BU Alumni Relations Office, as well as a proud BU alum. Delighted that you've chosen to join us for our Professional Development webinar series. And thanks to those of you who are rejoining us for this rescheduled session. I do see that we seem to be having some trouble with video. I know our presenter is probably working on that right now. Sorry, I'm just responding to some of your comments here. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be available for on-demand viewing on the BU Alumni Association website found at www.bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is very eager to answer any questions you have, and you're welcome to submit them using the chat box on the lower left-hand side of your screen. And we'll try to get to those questions as quickly as we can. We anticipate a lot of questions. I'll be moderating those. So again, feel free to chat in a question throughout the presentation, but please don't be insulted if we don't get to your question. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's featured speaker. Joshua Waldman is a BU alumnus from the 2006 class at the Graduate School of Management and is a leading authority on leveraging social media to find employment. He's the author of Job Searching with Social Media for Dummies, and his writing has appeared in Forbes, Huffington Post, Mashable, and the International Business Times. Joshua's career blog, careerenlightenment.com, won the About.com Reader's Choice Award for Best Career Blog in 2013. When he's not writing, Joshua presents keynotes, trainings, and breakout sessions around the world for students, career advisors, consortiums, and professional organizations. On a personal note, I want to encourage all of you to check out some of the amazing free career resources Joshua has made available on his website, which as you can see is careerenlightenment.com. Joshua, on behalf of the BU Alumni Association, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for rescheduling this valuable session, and the floor is all yours. I do have everybody on the call muted, so hopefully I can only hear your voice right now. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jeff, and thank you so much. It's my pleasure to reschedule. I don't know what happened last time, but we've got all things up and running on a platform that's worked for me in the past. So if I do talk for 20 minutes with nobody on the call, do let me know. That was fun, but this time we're going to do it right, and because this information is so pertinent and powerful right now for anybody out there who is concerned about finding a job or for their career in general, and for people who want to understand LinkedIn, not just as a technology platform, but as a networking tool.
Joshua, I hate to interrupt you. We do have some blinking video on our end. Would you maybe try stop sharing your screen and then we'll maybe reload it? Can we try that really quick?
When you say blinking video?
Yeah, you've just got that one slide that's up and it keeps on cutting in and out, which is obviously interesting. So.
Oh.
Everybody, thanks for your patience while we get this up and running. Many of you might notice we're using a new technology for our webinar, so we're in some ways building the plane while we're flying it. Looks like it's resolved. Everything looks great on my end. Thanks for bearing with us. And Joshua, go ahead.
Yeah, if it happens again, just let me know.
Will do.
So before I get into the 3 secrets, you guys, I wanted to tell you a story. Kind of a personal one. In 2009, when I moved to Portland, I was about to learn one of the most painful life lessons that I think I've ever learned. So we had just moved from Portland from Las Vegas. It was a great move for us because the culture here is just a better fit for who we are. We're vegetarians. We don't gamble. Vegas didn't make any sense, and the job up here was very well paid. But this was 2009, and a lot of people were getting laid off. We were in a pretty deep recession. So the realities of the economy at the time just didn't care that we were happy in Portland. That's nice. Now face reality. And so shortly moving here, one of my largest customers reduced their workforce by something like 20%, right? And at the time, Portland was already ranked 4th on employment just beneath Detroit. Now, this wasn't the first time that I was laid off in the last 6 months, right? And I knew what was coming next, and there was nothing I could do about it. 6 months previous to this, I was laid off from Cisco, which is where I was recruited right after getting my MBA. And I didn't like how that felt. I knew what was coming here in Portland with this new job, and I didn't like that. So, but, you know, something happened. Looking back at this experience, I realized that it was probably the best day of my whole life. But I just didn't know it yet. It didn't feel like it was the best day of my whole life. It felt pretty awful. And up until then, you know, I was kind of hoping that my degree, my MBA, would help me get a well-paying job. And the fact is that it could not guarantee my job security. And I had a whole issue with control. Right? Here I did everything right. I got my degrees, I got my MBA, but I was laid off twice in a row, and there's nothing I could really do about it. And I felt really out of control of my life and my career. I kind of felt like a leaf in the wind, to be honest, and so I was totally determined not to be that leaf. And through experimentation and trying new things, I actually discovered that I had more control than I thought. And in fact, I had more control than what most career counselors at the unemployment office thought when they told me that it would take 6 months just to land that job. Excuse me for a second. Life goes on. So this sense of control really came from experimenting with social media. And that's what I want to share with you today, because I was able to, in those 6 months that they said, you're not going to get a job, I actually did get a job. In fact, I had multiple offers just by using social media. And what I learned from talking with other successful job seekers and recruiters has been incredibly powerful, and I'd like to share with you some of those ideas today. In fact, when I started teaching these techniques, I was going around to various job search clubs in the Portland metro area and showing people what I'd learned. And others were getting similar results, like Jeff Smith here, who 6 months of unemployment, no luck at all, used some of the suggestions that we're going to talk about today. And literally within a week he had 17 inquiries coming in. And it's all because of very small changes that he made to his LinkedIn profile and the approach to how he was using LinkedIn to network. And we're going to talk about some of that stuff today. Carmen, and that's for an unemployed job seeker, Carmen used LinkedIn to get a contract position, but then continued to use LinkedIn to turn that contract position into a permanent position and then get several raises. These days she's actually in Europe, in Amsterdam, at her dream job, and she continues to use LinkedIn to get promoted within the same organization. So even if you currently have a job, there's a lot of opportunity here to accelerate your career. I want to share with you a couple of interesting statistics about what's going on in the job market today and why social media is so critical. We know, and there's various opinions about this, but somewhere between 2 to 3% of jobs actually even make it to job boards. Okay, so a very low percentage of jobs make it to job boards, which predicates the idea that there's some kind of a hidden job market out there. And it's true, a lot of jobs actually come from referrals and are never posted. And so because now we have, let's say we have 10 jobs, only 3 of them are, 100 jobs, 3 of them are making it to a job board. That means it's very competitive. So the jobs you see on job boards are extremely competitive. In fact, the Bureau of Labor Statistics say about 118 people go for every 1 job that's posted. So you're immediately commoditized. And this is statistics that actually came out this year in 2014 from JobSite to show that 94% of recruiters rely on LinkedIn to find talent. Rely is a really powerful word. It means the first thing they do when they go to the office to find people to fill jobs that they have to fill is that they log into LinkedIn. Now, what's interesting also from the same study is that Facebook is also very actively used by job seekers to find work. We don't have time to talk about Facebook today, maybe at a later webinar, but right now we're going to talk about LinkedIn and why that's so important. Before we do, I want to bring up this concept of a linchpin. I don't know if you've read this book from Seth Godin, but I read it a couple of years ago, and it's really stuck with me. And there's this concept he brings up about a linchpin. A linchpin is somebody who is indispensable at an organization. They're invested emotionally. And he tells a story about a guy who was working at a grocery store who was clearly, smart and talented, funny, personable, and he was very present. He invested a lot of emotional energy in bagging groceries. And so in this particular grocery store, where he was working, whatever cash register he was working at, had the longest lines, always. He would talk to the customers and ask them how they were and make eye contact and show genuine interest. He was really in complete control, and he knew that he had total job security. He was not going to get laid off because the customers really, really enjoyed working with him. And so, it brought up this idea that you can really put that emotional energy in everything that you do. And the lesson I learned when I was laid off 2 times was, I felt like that leaf in the wind, and slowly as I regained that sense of control and developed processes and experimented with social media in my job search, I felt more and more like a linchpin. And so my challenge here to you today is to really adopt that mentality of a linchpin, someone who proactively takes that step to feel like they're in control, to invest that emotional energy. And so if social media and LinkedIn is new to you, that's okay. Be that linchpin and invest that time and energy and take action and do something about it. If LinkedIn is something that you've been using for a while and haven't had great success with, that's okay too. We're going to talk about a lot of ways today in the next hour that you can transform those strategies and those techniques. So just so you know, an hour is not a whole lot of time, so I'm going to try to pack in as much information as I possibly can. And then towards the end of the webinar, I will show you some ways that you can continue to learn about these topics and take some next steps. So we know that there's over 280 million professionals using LinkedIn today globally. And if you go back to that slide, if you think about that slide where you have 118 people competing for every one posted job on average, LinkedIn is offering 280 million networking opportunities for you. And that is the power of this. It's all about the network. So we're going to talk about your message first. We're going to talk about that profile as a platform. And finally, we're going to talk about what do you actually do now that you have a good-looking profile. So my writers, I do offer LinkedIn profile writing services, which we'll talk about later, but my writers are always asking clients questions about who they are. It's so important to start talking about your message and your audience first, even before you start writing. So when a client comes in to see us, they're asked a lot of questions about what they're looking for, who their audience is, what are their values and passions, who inspires them. And the reason why we do this is you can't just sit down and fill out the blank areas of LinkedIn. As much as they'd like you to do that, it's very easy these days to turn on LinkedIn and just fill in the headline with whatever comes into your head and the summary with whatever you think is appropriate. But in order to have a really effective profile, you have to think a little bit more about your brand. And that's the biggest mistake people make. And that's really what I found is the difference between a linchpin and a leaf. The linchpin is going to stop and say, look, before I fill in my LinkedIn profile, what am I all about? Who's my audience? And how can I write in a relevant way for them? So you've heard the term personal branding before. The word brand doesn't really mean much anymore. It's overused. It's hard to define. I remember marketing class where we're trying to build brand equity equations. And that was completely impossible. In fact, I was giving a talk at the American Marketing Association a couple of years ago, and I asked the audience to define for me what does branding mean, and 5 people raised their hand, and I got 5 different definitions. So let's rebrand personal branding into personal positioning. I think it's an easier way to think about this topic, because at the end of the day, it's all about how you can position yourself as being the obvious choice for the employer, right? How to position yourself to be the obvious choice for your employer. That's what this is all about. And that's what Brooke Snow did, who was a client of mine. Now, if you look at this picture, there she is rocking out on a guitar. Now, when I show this picture to audiences, and I asked them this question, I said, do you think this is a good professional LinkedIn picture? Let me ask you guys, do you think that this is a good professional LinkedIn picture? Curious to see what you guys think.
Go ahead and chat in your answers to that question. Got one from Pamela that says no.
Nope.
Maggie says, I wish it was more focused.
Yes.
May says no. Another no from Randy.
Yeah. You know, at first glance, and you guys are right, at first glance, this doesn't seem like a very professional picture. But if we dig in a little bit, and this is where branding becomes so important, and this is why it's so important. If you dig in a little bit, her target audience is a creative marketing firm in downtown Portland called Waldman & Kennedy. And Waldman & Kennedy, if you've watched episodes of Portlandia, you know that it's a very playful organization. They sit on bouncing balls. They have video games in the break room. They throw around rubber chickens. They have a drink cart, which is pretty funny. It's a highly creative, a very intense and hardworking place for sure, but also a very creative and thinking outside the box kind of a place too. Brooke also knew that she was a playful person, and that's why she thought it was a good mix for her. So rather than what you would consider to be the traditional picture, she did this, okay? And this is her playing out on rock star guitar. She's being funny and creative. You can still see her face and recognize her. But at the same time, it's a very out-of-the-box picture. And because of this branding exercise that she had done, she made a choice. Branding is about making choices. She made a choice to put this picture on her profile, and it got her hired. Okay? So now, if I ask you the question, is this a good professional picture? You have to say yes, because it worked, and that's really all that matters. Personal branding is broken up into 2 major categories. It's the you cloud, the who you are sphere. The who you are sphere includes your values and your drives, passions, inspirations, what you're looking for next, what you enjoy doing when you lose track of time, the things that matter to you most. And the reason why we start here is traditional branding is about product, right? Let's say Crest toothpaste. Well, Crest toothpaste doesn't have values and passions and drives and goals and personalities and all of this stuff, but you do. And so you have to be congruent with the message that you're putting out there, and that means you have to understand yourself a little bit better. And one of the great ways, and values are hard to get to. Values are very hard. I can't come up to you and say, hey, Jeff, what are your values? And unless you've done an exercise, you're not going to know how to answer that. And it's also really hard to ask yourself. Like, go ahead and look in the mirror and say, okay, what are my values? Values are all about choices and decisions you make. So one way to access that deeper part of who you are is to do this exercise, and that's the 3 people you admire exercise. So on a piece of paper, and I encourage you to do this now or to take some time later to do this, but write down the names of 3 people you admire the most, and they can be historical, personal, fictional, or otherwise. It does not matter, but choose 3. And next to their name, write down the reason why you chose them. What was it, and here's an interesting question, what was it that they sacrificed in order for them to accomplish what they accomplished? What did they sacrifice? Right? And then ask yourself this question, why did I choose these 3? Why was these 3 more important to me than all of the other people I could have chosen? It's a great way to get to your values. Now, the next sphere of personal branding is the you sphere. It's the what they need, right? You can talk about what you care about all day and all night, but if it's not relevant to an audience, nobody is going to care. So how do we make sure that our message is on target and relevant to our audience? Well, the way to do that is to triangulate down to understand a person's needs. Starting highest level with the industry, like the Porter's 5 Forces kind of a thing to get MBA, to know what's going on with the industry, understand what the company's initiatives are, and then finally, using LinkedIn, we can hone in on the person's personal goals. And then we can start to write our LinkedIn messaging based on this information. So starting at the top, understanding the industry, a wonderful resource that I really encourage you to bookmark and write down is alltop.com. Alltop is a website of human curated news of hundreds of industries. You can go on here, pick your industry, and then see the 5 most popular websites and articles. And then as you scroll down, you can see the most important blogs and news sites and their top 5 articles. Spending about a week here is just going to do wonders to getting you up to speed with what's going on, what are hot topics, what are keywords, hot buttons you can push, questions you can ask during information interviews. Really a great place to start. Now we're narrowing down to the company research, and with LinkedIn's company search, it's just such an amazing way to build that top 10 list of companies that are interesting to you, starting with the industry there at the bottom left. Pick your industry. LinkedIn has about 130 industries categorized. Pick the one that's most related to you, and then go down by geography. You can next pick location, and based on that information, you can start to narrow down and whittle down a list of companies within your industry, within your location parameters that are interesting for you. And once you do that, you can now start to drill down. So you've written down a list of maybe 10 companies you're interested in. You're going to do search in Google on that. Now, who are the people working here? And why is that important? Well, if I know who's working there, I can start to see what they're interested in. I can start to see what groups they're involved with. I can see their updates, their posts. And based on that information, I can start to determine what they're interested in, what they're worried about, what keeps them up at night, all of the things that will help me write more relevant copy. So real quick, personal branding, who you are combined with what they need. When those things are brought together, that's when you have a powerful and effective personal brand. And that is when you can start writing your LinkedIn profile. So notice we haven't even started looking at our profiles yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Before I go on, does anyone have any questions about personal branding before we go into how to apply it to LinkedIn?
Nothing coming through on the chat box so far, Joshua.
All right, let's keep going then.
Great.
Just want to make sure I'm not going too fast or too slow.
We just did get one question from Ed. Does personal branding apply to a computer programmer? Personal branding seems to apply to marketing more.
No, great question. Personal branding applies to everybody. I met a computer programmer who has branded herself as the data wizard, and that's what she calls herself, and she writes in the voice of a wizard. It's a little bit cheesy, but she has understood that branding applies to everybody. There's a saying out there that goes, brand or be branded. Everything you do and say online determines how someone feels about you. It's the promise you're making, whether you're a computer programmer or marketing or an executive. It applies to everybody, whether we like it or not. So what I'm going to share with you about LinkedIn is not just my opinion. I really try to make sure that I research my topics and I give advice based on actual data. And to show that what I'm about to talk about is based on data, I'd like to show you this retina tracking heat map, which was published a couple of years ago, which is not changed since then. There's been a few more updates to this, and it has not changed at all as LinkedIn has updated their user interface. The first thing someone looks at is the picture. The second thing someone looks at is the headline. I hope you're tracking with me here, where the red dots are. They're coming down. The third thing someone sees is their current position. And as you're scrolling down the page, the fourth thing is the profile summary. So what we found is that recruiters are spending about 8 seconds on your profile before they decide to move on to somebody else. 8 seconds. This is how their eyes move. 1, picture. 2, headline. What are they doing now? Tell me more about this person. If you can get past that, they're reading your profile. If after 8 seconds you haven't captured them, too bad, too sad, they're going to move on to somebody else. That's just the way it is. So let's talk about some of these key critical elements to your LinkedIn profile. There are more elements, but I think these are the highest leverage ones we can talk about in an hour. The first one is your headline. Now, before we go any further, I'm just curious, does anyone on the call not have a LinkedIn profile?
Give folks a second to type in some answers here. Got one person, Sherry, so far is not on LinkedIn.
Okay. Well, I think most of you will recognize this area. This is the headline area. And what most people do in the headline area is they put in their job title. Satish Kumar, this first example, has just put in his job title. Rhetorical question here, Jeff, but how many other senior software engineers do you think are living in San Francisco?
Several.
Probably a lot, right? He really hasn't he hasn't really positioned himself. He's commodified himself, as a matter of fact. He looks exactly like the thousands of other senior software engineers in Silicon Valley. And so by just leaving his job title up there, he's not helped his cause. There's another side to the spectrum, however. So Satish Kumar, too simple, not enough positioning. Joseph Becker, way too much positioning, not clear enough. I'm curious, if folks want to pop into chat, what do you think Joseph Becker, what do you think his job role is, his job title? I help companies generate revenue through product innovation and go-to-market planning. What is his job title? I'm curious if you guys can guess.
Guess of sales executive.
Okay.
Marketing something.
Yeah.
Product developer.
Yeah.
IT tech product manager.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to know, isn't it? I mean, those are all very different roles in an organization. And if I was a very busy recruiter and I'm looking for a VP of marketing, I'm not going to find Joseph. In fact, he's a VP of marketing. And I would have had no idea if I was a recruiter or someone viewing his profile. So you can see why that's a problem as well. Kara is an instructor. She works for me. She implements a curriculum. She's a trainer who delivers a curriculum that I developed for the local employment offices. We have 5 employment offices here in Portland. And we train about, so far in the last year, about 600 people learning social media skills. And I really like the way she writes about herself in her headline because she has all of the right elements. She's an adult educator. Boom, job title, done. Right? She gets that right out of the way. Next, success coach and facilitator, putting the community in college to maximize learner success. It is so branded. We know that community is a hot value for her. We know that aligns really well. Maximize learner success aligns really well with her target audience, who are the local community colleges here. And you can see there was a lot of thought put into this. You have 120 characters, 2 lines to fill this in, and I highly suggest that when you do that, you think about including your job title and a little bit more positioning, personal positioning. And if you would have done that first personal positioning exercise, those decisions become a lot easier now. So headline, very, very important. Let's talk about summaries real quick. Summaries, this one is too long, obviously. It's also filled with jargon. And it doesn't tell me any story about this person. In fact, the only story it tells me about this person is that they like to use up the company that he's working for, their training budget, okay? Not really very compelling story here. This one's a little bit better, but it does lack a personal element, and what LinkedIn calls pro-personal. This one is too much pro, not enough personal. To fix this one, I would use first person. I would tell a little bit more story. It's short, which is good because if I'm a busy recruiter, I don't have time to read a long 5,000 character bio in this area. I just want to get to the point and get to know who this person is better and how they can help me. So that third mistake is rambling on in the profile summary. A lot of people don't have a profile summary. I won't ask folks to disclaim if you do or do not have a profile summary. But I would be interested to know if anyone on the call would like to learn a formula for writing a LinkedIn profile summary that's easy and would really capture your voice.
Josh, we got Sherry just chatted in with a quick question. We're getting a lot of people obviously responding that they would love to know the formula. I think 20 responses here. The question from Sherry is, why such an emphasis on recruiters?
That is a good question. I come at LinkedIn from the point of view of a job seeker. And understanding how to get people jobs starts with understanding how recruiters look for them. And I spend a lot of time researching, interviewing with recruiters, researching how they work, spending time with them during the day to see how they're using these tools. A lot of industries don't use recruiters. However, the experience is going to be very similar. And if a recruiter is sort of the extreme end of a hiring manager, then a hiring manager is going to be a lot easier to please. So if you can please the recruiter who's busy and overwhelmed, then you can absolutely please the hiring manager who's just looking to fill that one role underneath them. I hope that answers the question. All right, so let's get to that formula. It's really very simple. It's 4 easy questions. Maybe not so easy when you try them out, but I want you to try them out with me here today. This training is for you guys. So I already know this stuff. I want to make sure that you have it, and that I'd love for you to walk away from today's call with actually having a profile summary for you to post online. So let's see if we can get you that. In order to get you that, I need you to kind of follow along with me here with each of these 4 questions. And at the end, I'd love to get to know you better by listening to what your answers are. So the first question is very easy. It's who you are, and don't overthink this. I asked this question. I was giving a presentation with some career professionals in Los Angeles a couple of months ago, and a guy raised his hand, and he said, I'm a Vietnam-era vet. I've lived a long life, and I don't know how to answer that question. Who are you? And everybody laughed. And I said, that's great. That's fine. This is not a Zen koan. So, of course, we don't really know who we are. But for all intents and purposes for networking, we can at least articulate it in a way that makes sense. So I'm not asking you for a philosophical question here. Don't overthink it. The way to answer this question is with the formula, I am a blank specializing in blank. Okay, so I am a social media strategist specializing in helping people find jobs. Simple. This is the easiest of all the questions. Second question is, what do you do? Now this is where we get into the details of our audience, because it's not just what do you do, it's what do you do to solve somebody's problem. That predicates 2 things. First, you understand what someone's problem is, and number 2, that you have a unique way of addressing it. Your audience has unique sets of problems. For me, let's say I was talking to job seekers who are frustrated that resumes are not getting them as far as they used to. So when your resume and job applications are not getting you callbacks into interviews, I can show you how to network using social media to really accelerate your job search. So I'm addressing the problem in a unique way that's unique to me. So the way to think about this is think about your audience, who it is that you're writing for, and then understand what their needs are. And then just simply in a short statement, 1 or 2 sentences, explain that, number 1, you understand what the problem is, and 2, you have a unique way to solve it. I hope that makes sense for you guys. And by the way, these first 2 questions should look very familiar. They mirror exactly the personal branding framework that I introduced you to in the first part of this call. First question, who are you? That's the you sphere. Second question, what do you do? That's the them sphere. That's the relevance sphere. Let's move on to the hardest of these 4 questions, and that's why you are the best. Why are you the best? This is a really hard question for people, mainly because our society trains us to be modest. It trains us to not brag because we might alienate ourselves from our peer groups. The problem is that there's a very fine line between bragging and simply stating your accomplishments. And it's a lesson I learned the hard way. When I was first working at Cisco, I landed a pretty big deal. For a junior salesperson at the time, it was kind of unheard of. But I didn't tell anybody. I barely talked about it on a Friday sales call meeting. And after a couple of weeks of avoiding talking about it, my manager IM'd me. And, it's like, come here, please. I don't know about you, but if your manager IMs you, come here, please, you don't anticipate good news. So, I thought I was in trouble for something. I walk in looking guilty, close the door, sit down, and he looks at me and he says, you know what, Joshua? And I'm like, oh boy, here it comes. He goes, you're awesome. I'm like, excuse me? He's like, yeah, you're totally awesome. Like, you landed this big deal. Here's the problem. There are 50,000 people working in Cisco. Do you think you're going to get ahead by hiding under your cube? I said, no, I guess you're right. He says, you have to learn how to ring your bell. And that was a really important lesson for me. There's a fine line between talking about why you're great and bragging. As funny as that might sound to you, there's an art and a skill to being able to articulate this. And one way to get around this mental block is to think about one time in your career where you've had a big success, where you're proud of a success. Just think about that one time specifically. And I'd love for all of you to kind of visualize that in as much detail as you can. Close your eyes, think about that time in your career, your life, where you've had a big success, and then feel that pride inside of you, that acknowledgement that you've done something amazing. And open your eyes and write this down. Write down what role you played. What role did you play in that success? That is the answer to this question of why you're the best. The fourth and last question is, what do you want? What kind of job are you looking for? A lot of people, by this time in your profile summary, you've explained who you are, you explained how you can help your reader, you've explained why you're unique in being able to help your reader. Now what? And if any of you guys are in marketing, you know that every good advertising piece needs to have a call to action. So what are you looking for? If you're looking for a quota-retiring salesperson excited about innovations in the healthcare industry, please give me a call. Right? What is it you want that reader to do? Now, for those of you who already have jobs, you don't want to advertise that you're looking for another one, but you might want to be open to networking opportunities. So, I love talking about database, big data, and data processing. Feel free to contact me if you have any technical questions. And that might open up conversations with organizations that might eventually lead to better paying jobs, more responsibility, and so forth. So your call to action really is a very personal thing based on your situation and what you actually want. So here are those questions again. And real quick, Jeff, I think we have about 5 minutes max, more or less. If folks would like to share the answers to these 4 questions, I would very much like to learn more about you and maybe even give you some live coaching while we're on the call together.
Great. So folks, as Joshua said, feel free to answer some of these questions using the chat mechanism. Joshua can't actually see them, so I'll repeat them to him. Nothing so far, but I know it takes a few seconds to type some of these things in.
Mm-hmm.
And Joshua, are we at a point where you would just want to take any other questions, or?
Yeah, if people have questions about what we've covered so far, please feel free.
Okay. I think our audience is being a little bit shy right now.
That's all right. I made a really funny unintentional faux pas that turned into a joke. I was speaking with a group just a couple of weeks ago, and I asked folks in the audience, this is a Clark College up in Vancouver, Washington, and I asked the folks in the audience to raise your hand if you're an introvert. And of course no one raised their hand. You know, and it's like, no, that's not going to happen. So I did the opposite. I said, raise your hand if you're an extrovert. Half the room raises their hand. I said, thank you. Now I know who the introverts are. Sometimes it takes a little bit of waiting to get folks to participate, but I just want you to know that this call is for you, and I can help you with your LinkedIn profile summary right now while we're on the call together. Once we move past this part, we're not going to have a chance to do this.
Josh, we got an interesting question from Christine. Her question is, I recently got another degree and want to change careers, so how would she answer question number 2, what do you do?
Yeah, I just got an email too from someone else with the same question. They're switching careers. Career transition it happens a lot. In fact, it happens about 5 times in our career total. So it's a question everybody on the call will have to deal with at some point or another. So what you do, the answer to that question is really what you are aiming to do. So if you are moving from an educator role into an accountant role, for example, you're going to talk about yourself as an accountant. Okay? Who you are and what you do is what you say. You don't need to wait for permission. You don't need validation. It is who you are. When you get up on LinkedIn and you say, I am an accountant, you're an accountant. And you can back that up because you're going to have the credentials and the interests. And if you've done some career transition work, you're going to have transferable skills as well. So make sure you have those transferable skills ready to talk about. And then talk about in the present tense what it is that you're looking to do in the future.
I think another question here, Joshua, about answering these 4 questions is, should you definitely use your title? You know, are you a VP? Are you an MBA?
The title really belongs in the headline. You can use it here if you want, but it's not an essential characteristic.
Tracy asked a question that I think also sort of addresses these 4 questions. What about casting a wide net by being more general? Tracy feels like she's got some really transferable skills but wants to shift into a different industry. What would you say to that?
Well, I would start shifting into the new industry by assuming that you're already there. The problem with being too general is that it's very hard for your reader to relate to you. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Has anyone on the call ever purchased a car? And I'm assuming everyone's going to say yes. Now, have you had this experience? Have you driven that car off the lot, and then all of a sudden you see that car everywhere? Right? That happens to everybody. And there's actually a neurological reason for this. There's a part of our brain called the reticular activating system. And it's a filter. And what it does is it says, look, this is an important thing, and therefore I'm going to let it into my consciousness. And everything else is not important, so I'm not going to pay attention to it. When you buy the car, you're telling that part of your brain, this kind of car, this Volkswagen Bug is an important thing, and therefore I'm going to see it. And so you start to see it everywhere. There's evolutionary reasons why that happens, which we don't have to go into. But just know that everyone is walking around thinking about their own problems. Their reticular activating system is priming them to pay attention to very specific things. And when you're a generalist and you're not clear about who you are and what it is that you want in very specific terms, you basically become filtered out. And the only way to get through that filter is to speak in a way that accesses what's important to that audience member. So if someone's reading your profile, they have something very specific that they're looking for. And if you're not addressing it, they're going to ignore you. That's just the biological fact. And based on that, we need to craft our strategy to be as specific as possible. So I highly encourage you not to be a generalist. if you have multiple interests, to be specific in those interests in other areas of your profile. So think about your profile as an inverted triangle. At the very top, that's the most important part. That's the most important part.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. We're about 10 minutes out.
Yeah, we're about 15 minutes in. We're getting some general LinkedIn questions. Did you have other slides that you wanted to go through?
Yeah, I do have quite a bit more. So let's push forward.
Okay.
And maybe I'll answer some of those questions. So, and I'll go through these relatively quickly. They're quick tips. Would you show up to a job interview naked? No. It depends on the job. It depends if it would get me the job. Here's the thing. You're very likely going to be found on LinkedIn as a first impression. Okay, so let's accept that. Your first impression these days is very likely going to be on LinkedIn. And because of that, why would you not have a complete profile? Or as complete as possible? You know, it's kind of like showing up to an interview with not all your clothes on. You want to make that first impression as powerful as you possibly can, because you only get one first impression, right? You know the expression? Your picture matters a lot. As you can see from the memes that go around the internet, pictures matter a lot. We're visual creatures. We're very visual creatures. And I've heard statistics like something like 7 times more. If you have a picture on your profile, it's 7 times more likely to be viewed. So your picture matters a lot. A lot of people don't have a picture. They're uncomfortable with that. But keep in mind that when you leave off a picture on a network that's based on profile pictures, you're like going on a dating site saying that you're tall, dark, and handsome or whatever, and then you're not posting a picture. You know, what do you think is going to happen to the trust level? It's going to go way, way down. And so when hiring managers and recruiters and people who want to network with you are looking around on LinkedIn and you don't have a picture, you're basically not even playing the game. You're not stepping up to the plate. So you've got to have a picture. It's got to be a good picture. We talked about Brooks Snow. Brooks' picture is effective and professional, as we talked about. So don't let anyone else define for you what being professional on LinkedIn means. That's got to come from you. Pam Slim used this picture when she was doing one-on-one coaching. The chin on the palm is very much emotive of listening and attentiveness. Abhijit is a consultant. Of course, he's a little bit more buttoned up, but he's still smiling and very engaging in his expression. And he's tilted his head. All of the things that a professional headshot photographer are going to help you with. So be careful about your picture. It is as we saw in the heat map, the number one most important part of your LinkedIn profile, yet it is the most neglected part of people's LinkedIn profile for some reason. So don't make that mistake. Number 6 is multimedia. We now have an opportunity to show our work samples on LinkedIn. Showing our work samples is a way of indicating our value, just as a resume shows the world what we used to do. You want your LinkedIn profile to show the world what you can do for them in the future. And the way to do this is through video, slides, articles that you've written, websites that you've developed. All of that work sample, your body of work for your whole career, can actually be associated with each and every one of your work experience sections. And that all gets rolled up into your profile summary. So take advantage of that. It's an incredibly important way of differentiating yourself. Again, back to personal positioning, being different from everyone else. Now, I'm not going to make that mistake twice. I'm not going to ask the introverts to tell me that they're introverts. I'm assuming 50% of you are. I'm an introvert. Networking is very difficult for me. It's a chore. And that's not to say, I don't enjoy it. It takes a little bit more energy and thought than probably it does for an extrovert. So just be careful. And, we know statistically that networking is the most important thing you can do for your career. In fact, this study by Lou Adler suggested that a referral will increase your chances of being hired by almost 100 times. And that means that the more people you know and network with, every one person you meet increases your chances of getting hired by 100 times. So it's a very powerful thing, and you want to make sure that you're not avoiding networking by using social media and online tools. This, back in the day when I had around 880 connections, that gave me access to over 11 million people. And think about how powerful that is. It's one thing to have a nice looking profile, but what really matters is how you use that profile. And so your network is so incredibly important. So my advice to you is don't hide behind the monitor. Use the monitor to get out from behind it. Okay? And that means that, and by the way, here's a plug for the Boston University page. Use this tool to find people to network with. It is an incredible tool. You can go to linkedin.com/alumni, or you can search for Boston University, and you will see just a plethora of options for filtering and finding people to network with. I encourage you to do this every single day. Make a goal to meet one new BU alum every day using this tool to do that. Because the four most important words you're going to use when networking on LinkedIn is, let's take this offline. I'd like to take this offline. Because the faster you can move from an in-mail, a random stranger in-mailing somebody else on LinkedIn, to a phone call, to an email, to sharing a cup of coffee, the better off you're going to be. So really try to get those relationships offline as quickly as you possibly can. So that's our final mistake, which is leaving your online relationships online. So what are those 3 secrets? The webinar today was called the 3 secrets. All of these tips can be boiled down into 3 main areas. Personal positioning. Do this first. I'm so emphatic about this. But before you touch your LinkedIn profile, figure out your message first. Okay? Don't make the mistake of just glancing this over. Number 2 is polish. We talked a lot about that heat map and those areas of your profile that are really important to start polishing off: your headline, your profile summary, and your picture. If you do anything, do those 3. And then take those relationships offline. Now that you have a pretty profile, do something with it. Do something with it. I know that we're running a little bit out of time, so I just want to, come on slide, talk about next steps a little bit. And really quickly, in fact, why don't I ask you guys, I just want to talk about next steps that you can take, and then we'll talk about questions, and I'll take questions and we can go over, if that's fine with you, Jeff. I don't mind a few minutes going over. But before I talk to you about next steps that you can take, I just want to make sure that it's cool with you guys if I talk about my LinkedIn profile writing services a little bit, and also provide you with some free resources. Just say yes in chat if you want me to talk about that stuff. If not, that's fine. I don't want to waste your time.
Bunch of yeses. And Joshua, obviously we talked about this. I'd love for you to talk about the work that you're doing now for a few minutes. So yeah.
Sure. Okay, let's get into it a little bit. Writing about yourself is really, really hard. Now, there's only so much we can talk about in an hour. I have 7 really awesome LinkedIn profile writers who work with me. They're trained on 12 different frameworks for writing headlines and 12 different frameworks for summaries. They do this every single day. And you know, I don't know if you've heard the expression, but the skills you need to find a job are not the same skills needed to do the job. And so that's why there is a career professionals industry. There are resume writers to help you write your resume. And of course there are LinkedIn profile writers too. And there's a lot of benefits to working with a professional. It saves you time and frustration because, you know, it's just really hard. I don't know what to say about myself. I mean, I wrote a 360-page For Dummies book, and the bio area was the hardest thing for me to write. Because it's a professionally written profile with keywords, it's going to attract more opportunities to you. You can think about other things while it's getting written, which will give you a better sense of control. And it's that first impression. And by the way, you guys, if you don't like the profile that we delivered to you, we'll give you your money back. Seriously, my goal, and I don't know if you can tell this, but I'm really passionate about helping people find work. And if that profile, if you think that profile is not going to help you do that, I don't want your money, plain and simple. So, you know, let's be honest and upfront about that. If you're not happy with the work we do, you can have your money back. And, you know, I've been doing this for over a year now. I've written profiles for over 300 customers in that time. And this was an email that I got from Roxanne, who is a client of ours. actually got her hired within a week. Now, I can't guarantee results like this, but her profile came out really, really beautifully. She was very focused. She worked with her writers back and forth for about a week until we got a really nice profile ready for her. She posted it, and within a week she had her dream job. So these things do happen, and very often it's very small things, very small changes to your profile that can make these opportunities come alive for you. So what I'd like to do, and because you guys are all fellow BU alums, and I'm a very proud BU alum myself, if you guys order a LinkedIn profile from me in the next 10 minutes, or probably in the next day or so, I think that the special on the website here, which is careerenlightenment.com/BU, ends in about an hour, hour and a half. So if you're interested in taking advantage of this today, I will personally send you a hard copy, a physical copy of my workbook, which goes through extensive personal branding exercises, which we talked about today very briefly, extensive profile management, and I also introduced something called the FIRE method, which is exactly what to do to network to get conversations with hiring managers and potential employers. So the whole thing is basically spelled out here, and I'll just send it to you as a thank you. So that's my spiel. I really hope to have a chance to work with you. It's about $297 to set up a profile with me, and if that's too much, you're more than welcome to sign up for my blog and get some of those free resources as well. So with that, Jeff, let's see what some of the questions are.
Yeah, we're running right at an hour mark, so we'll get to a couple questions here. Joshua, I did want to say, obviously you gave us a full 60 minutes of some really great free content. I've managed all of our webinars, and I think this is probably going to go down as one of the most useful and applicable ones. So thank you for that, and I'm happy to give you a few seconds to talk about the services that you're providing for a fee. Got a good question from Yanina. Yanina, I hope I'm saying your name right. But her question was writing a successful title or summary for somebody who's just right out of school. When you haven't had a lot of professional experiences, maybe you've had some internships. Joshua, what would some of your advice be for that?
Yeah, right out of school. And by the way, colleges are using this workbook and these frameworks all the time. So students are using that same 4-question formula. In fact, it was written specifically for students. There are ways to access parts of your life that are not quote-unquote professional, right? So if you were involved with student leadership, volunteerism, certain projects in class like group work that were particularly challenging or difficult, some international travel if you've had any, even side jobs that might not necessarily be directly related to what you're interested in. You want to start accessing those. LinkedIn has put a lot of emphasis on helping students. So there are sections of your profile now, like courses that you've taken specifically that you can start to fill out. Volunteerism, causes that you care about, to really round yourself out. So you want to make sure that, yes, you don't have a lot of professional experience, and maybe you have 1 or 2 experience section entries, but that's okay. As long as you fill it out, you have recommendations for those sections, experience sections, and you're telling your story. There's a lot of students, and this is a caveat, there's a lot of students, millions of students graduating this year and entering the job market. What you need to be most concerned about is how you're different from all of them. And so that 3rd question, why are you the best, is the one you need to spend the most time thinking about and writing. That's the best advice I can give you there. And I think that BU's alumni office or the Career Center can help you through a lot of that kind of thinking, because it is hard to do alone. And it's a lot easier to talk with someone, a professional who does this. And I think that their service is available to you to figure that out.
Joshua, we've got a bunch of questions we're not going to get to today. Could I ask if we created a discussion post on our BU Alumni Association LinkedIn group? Do you think maybe you could make yourself available to answer questions in that arena for the next couple of days? I know you're pretty active on our group already.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's make a post there, and I promise to be active and respond to your questions at least until Friday. I'm traveling next week, so I won't be able to do it next week. So if you have your questions, do it today, and I'll get to it before Friday.
Yeah, Joshua, this was fantastic. As I mentioned, I think some really applicable, tips that people can go on LinkedIn and make a difference today. So thank you again for your time. I'm glad you were able to reschedule and make this available to all of our alumni. I also want to thank everybody for participating today. Hope you found value in this program, that you'll think about joining us for our next professional development webinar. That's going to happen on June 25th. We've got an alumna named Laura Met-Frizzell who is going to present a topic that I think is going to be really interesting. Her session is called Creatives Are No Longer the Rock Stars of Marketing. You can register for that webinar now or visit our library of on-demand webinars on our website at bu.edu/alumni. And as always, if any of you have a suggestion for a topic for a future webinar, or you or yourself or you know somebody who would be a great presenter for the BU alumni community, I invite you to email me directly at jtmurphy@bu.edu. That's J as in Jeff, T as in Thomas, Murphy@bu.edu. Joshua, thank you again. Everyone, thanks for your time. I look forward to seeing you at future alumni events. Goodbye.